At my own wedding, just as I thought nothing could ruin the happiest day of my life, my sister stood up, grabbed the microphone, and screamed, "The bride is a liar. You all need to know the truth." Gasps echoed through the hall, my husband's face went pale, and every eye turned to me. My name is Claire, and until that day, I believed my life had finally pieced itself together into something close to perfect. I grew up in a small Midwestern town with a family that looked functional from the outside but was fraying on the inside. My younger sister, Hannah, had always been the whirlwind, loud, reckless, dramatic, while I played the responsible one, the fixer, the quiet achiever. Through high school and college, I was the one pulling grades, working part-time jobs, keeping my head down. Hannah skipped classes, flitted between friends and boyfriends, and somehow always landed on her feet because my parents rushed to rescue her. I remember nights when Mom and Dad were whispering about her maxed-out credit cards, only to pay them off the next morning, smiling at breakfast like nothing happened. Meanwhile, if I so much as asked for gas money, I was told to budget better. I learned early, if I wanted stability, I had to build it myself. So I did. I poured myself into work, got an entry-level position at a marketing firm, and clawed my way upward. By the time I was 27, I had a career, my own apartment, and a circle of friends who actually cared. Then came Daniel. Daniel was everything I had quietly dreamed of: kind, ambitious, grounded. He was an architect, the type who could get lost sketching blueprints on a napkin at dinner but always looked up when I laughed. He listened. He noticed the small things, like when I switched to decaf after 4 p.m. or when I wore the bracelet my grandmother left me. When he proposed, it felt like proof that all my years of holding everything together, all my sacrifices, had finally led to something beautiful. But family, especially Hannah, doesn't just fade into the background. At first, it looked manageable. When I announced the engagement, Mom squealed, Dad hugged me stiffly, and Hannah smirked. She muttered, "Guess you finally beat me at something." I brushed it off. She was jealous, sure, but maybe she'd come around. I wanted to believe my wedding could be a chance for all of us to put aside the old rivalries, at least for one night. The planning months were stressful but joyful. I picked a venue with string lights and vaulted ceilings, Daniel's mother helped with flowers, and my bridesmaids were endlessly supportive. Even Hannah volunteered to help, offering to handle music playlists. It surprised me. Maybe she really did want to make amends. I chose to see her effort as a sign we were healing. Our family dinners leading up to the big day were filled with chatter about dress fittings, cake flavors, guest lists. Mom occasionally nagged about costs, Dad mostly kept silent, but Hannah, she played along. She joked about how she'd catch the bouquet, teased Daniel about his bow tie choice, even hugged me one night after a wine-filled rehearsal dinner. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I'm not going to ruin your big day. Promise." I wanted to believe her. I clung to it. For once, it felt like my family might rally around me instead of tearing me down. On the wedding morning, I woke up giddy, nerves dancing through me, but my heart felt light. The gown fit like a dream. The sun was shining. Daniel's eyes, when he saw me walking down the aisle, shimmered with a kind of love that anchors you to the earth. For a few hours, everything was exactly how I had imagined. Laughter, clinking glasses, speeches filled with warmth. I thought maybe, just maybe, the old wounds had been left behind. But false stability is the cruelest kind. Because while I was busy believing Hannah's promise, she was sharpening the knife. The first crack showed itself weeks before the wedding, though at the time I told myself it was nothing. It was during my bridal shower. My friends had gone all out: streamers, a cake with white frosting shaped like a wedding dress, even a silly sash that read, "Bride-to-be." I sat in the center, surrounded by gifts wrapped in silver paper, my cheeks sore from smiling. Everyone laughed, toasted, snapped photos. Then Hannah arrived, late, as usual. She swept in wearing a tight red dress, heels clicking on the hardwood, sunglasses perched unnecessarily on her head. She looked like she was walking into a nightclub, not her sister's shower. "Oh, don't mind me," she said loudly, dropping her oversized bag onto the gift table with a thud. I figured the star of the show wouldn't mind a little competition. Laughter bubbled awkwardly, but my stomach nodded. Competition. She always slipped that word in like everything was a contest. I forced a smile, hugged her, and brushed it off. But Hannah wasn't done. When I opened gifts, she leaned close to make snide comments only half under her breath. Another set of dish towels? Riveting. Wow, a blender. Because nothing says romance like smoothies. Some of my friends exchanged glances, but I tried to laugh along, cheeks burning. I didn't want to make a scene. Then came her gift. A small box, wrapped sloppily in newspaper. I tore off the paper to reveal a gag present, a marriage survival kit. Inside were earplugs, for when he won't shut up, a bottle of aspirin, and a novelty apron with ball and chain printed across the front. Everyone laughed politely, but it wasn't kind laughter. It was uncomfortable, confused. My heart sank. I looked up at Hannah, hoping for a wink, a playful smile to show it was harmless teasing. Instead, her eyes glittered with something sharper, satisfaction. I told myself it was just her sense of humor, that she didn't mean it. But a voice inside whispered, "She's testing you. She's showing you what she's capable of." The second warning came during rehearsal dinner. Daniel's parents had joined us at a cozy Italian restaurant, their warmth a stark contrast to the tension simmering at my family's side of the table. Wine glasses clinked, pasta bowls were passed, and for a while, everything seemed calm. Then Hannah leaned across the table and said, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "So Daniel, you know Claire wasn't always so put together, right? She had her wild streak. Let's just say college wasn't exactly saintly for her." The table went quiet. Daniel looked startled, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. I felt heat rising in my cheeks. "Hannah," I said sharply, "that's not dinner conversation." She smirked. "Relax. I'm just saying, nobody's perfect. Even you." The air grew heavy. Daniel reached for my hand under the table, giving it a reassuring squeeze. But the damage was done. His parents glanced between us, polite smiles faltering. I laughed weakly, trying to move the conversation along. But inside, I was rattled. Later that night, as I slipped off my shoes in my apartment, I stared at myself in the mirror and whispered, "She wouldn't ruin this. She wouldn't dare." But deep down, I wasn't sure. The first warning bells had sounded. I just hadn't yet realized how loud they'd become. The days leading up to the wedding should have been filled with joy, anticipation, and maybe a touch of nervous excitement. Instead, they felt like walking barefoot across broken glass, every step cautious, every word heavy, every glance from Hannah loaded with something I couldn't quite name but knew was dangerous. It started small, with whispers. My friend Lydia pulled me aside after a bridesmaid's dress fitting. "Hey, Claire. I don't want to stir drama, but Hannah told me you're second-guessing the marriage. Is that true?" I blinked, stunned. "What? No. Absolutely not." Lydia looked relieved, but I caught the flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Okay. I figured it didn't sound like you. She just made it seem like, well, like you had doubts." My chest tightened. Doubts? Hannah was planting seeds in my friends' minds, making them question my commitment before I even walked down the aisle. I laughed it off in the moment, but when I got home, the laughter curdled into something darker. Fear. Then, the sabotage became more brazen. The DJ called me one afternoon, confused about last-minute changes. "Just confirming, you want us to cancel the playlist you sent and replace it with Hannah's list?" My heart dropped. "What? No, absolutely not. That's not authorized." Apparently, Hannah had contacted him directly, pretending it was on my behalf. If I hadn't caught it, my carefully chosen songs would have been replaced with whatever chaos she thought would be funny. When I confronted her, she laughed. "Relax, sis. People don't care what songs are playing. You're so uptight. I was just helping." Helping. That word rang in my ears like mockery. I wanted to scream, but Daniel calmed me down. "Don't give her the reaction she wants. She thrives on it." Still, I couldn't shake the dread. At night, lying in bed, I felt the walls closing in. Daniel's breathing was steady beside me, but my mind raced. What else was Hannah changing, twisting, breaking behind the scenes? And then came the cruelest blow. 3 nights before the wedding, I logged into the shared family group chat, a place where relatives swapped travel plans and updates about dresses or seating charts. And there it was, a string of messages from Hannah. "She's not ready for this. Daniel deserves to know who she really is. I love her, but someone has to be honest." Dozens of relatives reacted with the shocked face emoji, some typing frantic responses asking what she meant. Hannah never clarified, just left the implication hanging in the air like a loaded G*N. I called her immediately. "Why would you write that?" She answered coolly, almost bored. "Because it's true. You're living in some fantasy where everything is perfect, but it's not. Someone has to tell the truth, and if you can't, I will." I sat in silence, trembling. She had me cornered. She was weaving a story where I was the fraud, the liar, the pretender. And the worst part? People believed her. By the time the rehearsal dinner rolled around, I could feel the tension. Some relatives looked at me with pity, others with suspicion. Daniel noticed, squeezing my hand, but even he was beginning to feel the weight of Hannah's poison. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my car outside the venue, headlights off, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. My wedding was supposed to be a celebration of love, yet it felt like a battlefield. And Hannah, she was winning. The night before my wedding, the truth came crashing down like a chandelier. I was in my hotel suite, carefully hanging my dress on the door, when there was a soft knock. I opened it to find Lily, my maid of honor, best friend since childhood, standing there, her face pale. "Claire, we need to talk," she whispered. My stomach flipped. "What is it?" She glanced over her shoulder, as if making sure no one followed, then stepped inside. "It's about Hannah. I think she's planning something." I froze. Planning what? Lily pulled out her phone, scrolling until she found the screenshot. It was a text thread. Hannah and one of the groomsmen, Nate. "She doesn't deserve this fairy tale," Hannah had written. "Daniel deserves the truth, and if Claire won't tell him, I will. Tomorrow." Nate's reply, "This isn't my business, Hannah." "It is now," Hannah snapped back. "If I get the mic, I'm telling everyone what she did in college. The lies. The cheating. All of it." My blood ran cold. Lies. Cheating. She was going to invent an entire history of betrayal, at my wedding, in front of Daniel, his family, my friends, everyone. I sank onto the edge of the bed, heart hammering against my ribs. Why would she do this? Lily sat beside me, her voice low but firm. "Because she's jealous. Because she can't stand that you built a life she couldn't. But Claire, you need to be ready. She's not bluffing. She wants to humiliate you." I buried my face in my hands. The years of rivalry, the snide remarks, the cutting jokes, it had all been building to this. And now Hannah had found her stage. Sleep was impossible that night. Every creak of the hotel walls, every flicker of headlights outside sent me spiraling. My mind conjured Hannah grabbing the microphone, Daniel's shocked face, the whispers, the pity, the shame. By morning, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Pale, hollow-eyed, a bride who seemed halfway broken before the day even began. The ceremony itself went smoothly, almost too smoothly. Hannah stood at the front, her smile sweet, her laughter timed perfectly, like she was rehearsing a role. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe she'd decided against it. Maybe she wouldn't go through with her threat. But when the reception began, I saw the glint in her eyes. She was waiting. The toast started. Lily spoke with warmth that made me cry. Daniel's best man told embarrassing but affectionate stories. Daniel himself even said a few words, promising me a lifetime of love. The room was glowing with happiness. And then Hannah stood. She held the microphone, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "I wasn't planning on saying anything," she began, her voice carrying easily over the room, "but I can't sit here and pretend everything is perfect when it's not." A hush fell. My chest tightened so hard I could barely breathe. "Claire," she turned to me, eyes gleaming, "you've always been the golden girl. The one who got everything. But Daniel and everyone else here deserves to know the truth about who you really are." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel looked at me, confused, alarmed. This was it. The knife was about to land. And in that split second, something inside me shifted. Fear twisted into resolve. Hannah thought she had me cornered, but maybe, just maybe, I could turn the blade back on her. Time slowed as Hannah stood there, microphone clutched like a wee *P*N, her smile spreading wider with every second of silence. Guests shifted uncomfortably, the clinking of glasses fading into a heavy, suffocating quiet. My heart thundered in my chest, but beneath the fear, something else sparked. Anger. Anger that after years of biting my tongue, of letting Hannah chip away at me, she thought she could take this day from me too. Not anymore. I stood. My chair screeched against the polished floor, drawing every eye. Hannah blinked, surprised, as I reached for the second microphone near the DJ booth. My voice shook at first, but the determination rising inside me steadied it. "You want to talk about truth, Hannah?" I said, my voice echoing through the hall. "Then let's talk about it." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Daniel's hand twitched as if to reach for mine, but he stopped, watching, waiting. Hannah tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Oh, Claire. Are you really going to pretend you've been perfect?" "Perfect?" I laughed bitterly. "No. But I don't need to be. I've worked for everything I have, while you've spent your life tearing me down. And now you're here, trying to ruin my wedding, because deep down you can't stand that I built something you couldn't." Gasps scattered through the audience. Hannah's face darkened, but I pressed on. You want to talk about college? Fine. Let's talk about how you dropped out of 2 programs because you couldn't keep up. Let's talk about the rent you never paid, the money you borrowed from mom and dad that was never returned. Should we keep going, Hannah? Her jaw tightened, the smirk slipping. I turned to the guests, my voice steady now. My sister came here tonight with one goal, to humiliate me. But what she doesn't realize is that her lies don't define me. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let her poison my life anymore. The room erupted in murmurs. Some nodded, others whispered. Daniel stood then, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. Enough, he said clearly. Claire, I know who you are. And nothing Hannah says will change that. His words hit like a shield wrapping around me. The weight in my chest loosened. But Hannah wasn't done. Her face flushed, she spat into the microphone. You think you're better than me? Everyone here should know you've been lying about your life, your career, your so-called perfect relationship. I didn't flinch. Prove it, I said coldly. Show everyone your evidence. The silence that followed was deafening. Hannah's lips trembled, but no words came. That was when Lily stood, lifting her phone. Actually, she said loudly, I do have evidence. Screenshots of Hannah's texts to the groomsmen. Threats. Lies. Plans to sabotage tonight. All eyes swung to Lily as she projected the messages onto the big screen behind the head table. The words glared in black and white. Hannah's bitter threats, her promise to expose me, her declaration that she'd make sure my marriage started in ruins. The room gasped in unison. Hannah's face drained of color. You wanted the truth? Lily's voice cut like steel. There it is. Hannah sputtered. That's out of context, but the crowd wasn't buying it. The tide had turned. Daniel pulled me close, kissing my temple. We're done letting her control this. And for the first time in years, I felt free. For a long, tense moment, the ballroom was silent, so silent I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. Hannah stood frozen, gripping the microphone so tightly her knuckles were white. Behind her, Lily's projected screenshots glared like a spotlight on her betrayal. Then, like a cornered animal, Hannah snapped. This is all lies, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You're all against me. You've always been against me. Claire's the golden child, Claire the perfect bride, Claire who never does anything wrong. And now you're humiliating me in front of everyone. Her words spilled out in a torrent, no longer sharp or calculated but wild, desperate. Guests exchanged uneasy looks. A few gasped, others whispered behind their hands. Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight, but I raised my hand to stop him. This was my battle to finish. Hannah, I said evenly, my voice cutting through her hysteria, you came here tonight to destroy me. But all you've done is show everyone who you really are. Her chest heaved. You think you've won? You think this marriage will last? Just wait. Daniel will see the truth eventually. He'll see you're not worth it. Daniel's voice boomed across the hall. That's enough. His arm wrapped around me protectively, his glare fixed on her. I know exactly who Claire is. She's the woman I love, the woman I chose, and the woman I'll stand by for the rest of my life. Nothing you say changes that. A roar of applause broke out. Friends, relatives, even Daniel's parents rising to their feet. The sound was overwhelming, a tidal wave of support crashing over Hannah's crumbling facade. But Hannah wasn't finished. With a guttural scream, she hurled the microphone onto the floor, the crack echoing through the room. Glasses rattled, guests flinched. She stormed toward me, eyes blazing, as if she meant to lunge. 2 groomsmen, Nate and Jason, intercepted her, stepping between us. You need to leave, Nate said firmly. Get your hands off me, she spat, struggling against them. This isn't over. But her thrashing only made her look smaller, more pitiful. Security, alerted by the commotion, entered the hall. Within minutes, Hannah was escorted out, still shouting, still insisting she'd been wronged. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving behind a stunned silence. For a beat, no one moved. Then, slowly, a wave of relief swept the room. Someone started clapping, and soon the entire hall joined in, not polite applause, but thunderous, cathartic cheering. Daniel turned to me, cupping my face in his hands. It's over, he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. I let out a shaky laugh, tears streaming down my cheeks. She really tried to ruin everything. She failed, he said simply. Because we didn't let her. The DJ, bless him, picked that moment to switch tracks. Music swelled, and guests began to return to the dance floor, their laughter tentatively bubbling back. It was as if the storm had passed, the air scrubbed clean. Still, I couldn't shake the image of Hannah's face, the wild desperation, the fury. I knew this wasn't the end of her bitterness, but it was the end of her control. For once, she hadn't won. Daniel held me close as we swayed to the music, the room spinning around us in a blur of joy. For the first time that night, I felt truly safe, truly free. Hannah had tried to write the ending to my story. Instead, I had taken back the pen. The reception eventually found its rhythm again, but for me, the night ended in fragments, laughter broken by tremors of relief, tears mixing with champagne, and a heavy ache that only settled once Daniel and I finally closed the door to our suite. I collapsed onto the bed, my gown pooling around me like a storm cloud finally drifting away. Daniel sat beside me, his hand warm and steady in mine. For the first time since Hannah had stormed out, silence felt safe. "You handled it better than anyone could have," he murmured. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping. "I don't feel like I handled anything. I feel like I barely survived it." He tilted my chin until I met his eyes. "No. You stood up to her. You showed everyone the truth. That took strength." Strength. The word lingered in my mind long after Daniel drifted into sleep beside me. For so long, I had believed that strength meant keeping the peace, absorbing Hannah's venom, pretending it didn't hurt. But tonight, I learned strength could look different. It could be standing, shaking, terrified, and still refusing to break. The days that followed were a blur. Word of Hannah's outburst spread fast. Relatives called, some apologizing for ever believing her, others expressing shock at the depth of her bitterness. A few, the ones who had always leaned in her direction, stayed quiet. Silence, I realized, was its own kind of confession. Mom called once. She sounded exhausted, her voice thin. "I don't know what's gotten into your sister," she said. "But I'm proud of you, Claire." It was the first time I could remember hearing those words from her. They should have felt like healing. Instead, they just left me hollow. Where had that pride been when Hannah was cutting me down for years? Why now, after everything was already in ruins? Hannah herself didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't apologize. But I didn't expect her to. In truth, I didn't even want it anymore. The marriage began in chaos, yes, but also in truth. Daniel and I learned quickly that honesty was our strongest armor. We talked openly about Hannah, about my fears, about his worries. We built walls, but not between each other, between us and the toxicity that tried to pull us apart. Months passed. Our photos from that day told a story, a bride and groom laughing, kissing, dancing under twinkle lights. No camera captured the storm Hannah unleashed, and I realized I preferred it that way. Let the pictures show joy. Let history remember love. But I remember the truth. I remember standing in front of everyone, shaking but unbroken. I remember the way Hannah's voice cracked when her lies collapsed under their own weight. I remember Daniel's hand in mine, his words anchoring me. Nothing she says will change that. Hannah lost more than her temper that night. She lost her mask. People saw her for who she really was, and once the mask is gone, it can't be put back on. As for me, I gained something unexpected. Not just a husband, not just a marriage, but a clarity I'd never had before. I stopped asking why Hannah hated me, why she couldn't celebrate my happiness. I stopped trying to fix something that was never mine to fix. The truth is simple. My life isn't hers to sabotage. My story isn't hers to tell. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, I replay it all. The gasp of the crowd, the applause that drowned her out, the sudden peace when the door slammed behind her. And every time, I come back to the same realization. Hannah thought she was writing my downfall. Instead, she wrote the moment I finally stood up, the moment I finally saw myself as strong. And that, I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.